Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I hope you're doing well. It's nice to be with you. Greetings from the wintry mountains of Colorado and the deer and the snow. I'm honored to be with you today and spend a few moments together in communion. And there's something about being together, even on a Zoom call like this, where there's a linking up that happens and that I'm very much aware of now as I see some of you, where we can come together really in the space of the heart with our mirror neurons and our resonant circuitries connected and activated and online, and just honoring the reality that, at least with the nervous system we've been given here in this world anyway, as an open, sensitive human being, that all healing is relational in its nature and its essence. And so I'm grateful that we have this time to be with one another. So maybe we could start with a short meditation as a way to fully arrive here into this field together. And so if it feels safe enough or comfortable enough, maybe you could close your eyes and just allow your center of gravity, the miracle of awareness, to drop into your body and to feel yourself sitting in the chair that you're in. Maybe your hands are gently in your lap. And with your mind, nervous system coming to rest. As we open together into a space of receptivity, of being, of attunement to the unfolding of the here and now, and allowing your energy and your awareness to flow downward toward the ground, touching in for a moment in your heart. And then with your belly, through the muscles of your legs, and coming to rest at your feet as your feet touch the ground with your energy anchored downward into the earth. It's as if your feet were being filled with a soft, golden yellow light, the warmth of embodied, spacious awareness. Noticing any sensations in your feet, a tingling or other movement of life energy. And also any sensations at those touch places where your feet make contact with the floor. If you'd like, you could lightly press your feet down into the floor as a way to evoke that felt experience of grounding and of embodied presence. And you might imagine roots growing out from the bottom of your feet and extending down into the muddy soil of the earth. The softness and the aliveness of that, the nourishment contained and held with the sense that you're home, that you truly belong here to this place, to this star, in this body, exactly as you are. And resting here for a few moments, alive, aware, online, receptive, listening, presence. Allowing yourself to be held by something vast and spacious, contained within a warmth, a benevolence, within the mystery of being. And opening your awareness now more globally to the fullness of your experience. You might notice how much space there is around it, a field of holding and warmth around you and your body, allowing your experience to be exactly as it is in this moment, lightly touching and being touched by whatever appears, by whatever visitor comes into the tavern of being, an image, a sound, a thought, a feeling, a piece of soul longing to be known. Just feel and sense the space around the thoughts, the feelings, the images and sensations. They too are also held in the warmth and mystery of beingness, which is also holding you and all of us, along with the oceans and the forests, the mountains and the stars. And let's just rest here for a few moments together, connected, rooted and grounded in the earth and the body, held by the mystery of this life. Home in this moment, a sense of true belonging, exactly as you are. Okay, so thank you. It's always nice to spend some time in communion with everyone. So it's so easy, in the midst of our busy lives and everything that's going on socially, culturally, and in the collective, to lose touch with the inner friend, which for me is a dimension or a quality of being, that felt experience of aliveness, spontaneity, creativity, and play, that are the essences of this open, sensitive, very human heart and nervous system. And what I've come to discover personally, in my own life and also in my clinical practice, is that when we lose experiential contact with this reality, there can be a real sense of meaninglessness, emptiness, a lack of life energy, as well as a deep longing within us to come home and to play again, to create, to dance, to sing, to love and be loved, to just be. And this metaphor of longing to come home is a rich and evocative one that we find in many of the world's poetic, mystical, and spiritual traditions. And, an experience that can express itself in any number of ways, as an unexpected mood, as an ache in the heart, a restlessness or exhaustion in the body, as a figure in a dream or a piece of fantasy, or a yearning deep in the soul for nature or beauty or connection. And in periods of liminality and transition, these in-between places, whether in the soul or in the culture or the collective, it's an act of mercy and of kindness, really, to pause, to slow down, to give ourselves the time and the space and also the permission, to come to the ground, to drop into the earth and to inner and outer nature, to gather and to hold the broken pieces near, and to really feel, to grieve, to touch that burning, that ache, and to tend to the dissolution of the dream of the way we thought it was all going to turn out, the way me and my life was supposed to be. And I see this coming to the ground, and this embodied grieving and holding of the shattered or the scattered, where we provide a temple for the lost orphans of psyche and soma to gather. I see this as a prerequisite, as a sacred fertilizer and the planting of a holy seed, for something new to emerge and to bear fruit, to produce a new form, a new way of being. And the way that seed is watered is by placing that which has dissolved or is in the process of dissolving onto an altar in front of us, where we can be in conscious, embodied, compassionate, merciful relationship with the material as it transforms, reorganizes, and reassembles. And the rebirth aspect of the death rebirth cycle is catalyzed by our willingness and our capacity to feel and to grieve and to allow ourselves to enter into the creative unknown, into relationship with something that we might sense is nearby and emerging, but we can't quite access it yet. It's not yet given. It's still unfolding itself in the womb. And this is an easy place to be, it can feel really groundless and shaky and tender and raw, like there's no real reference point for it. I mean, we don't really live in a world that honors so much the vitality and the creativity and the value of not knowing, or that provides a true holding environment for this sort of reassembling, for a real falling apart of the way things have been. But as we come into relationship with the ashes and the tears that emerge from this, we open to the possibility anyway that this process of falling apart isn't some great cosmic error that we have to urgently correct or repair, but is an emissary of wholeness, a representative of the ally. I mean, there are moments in all of our lives when we find ourselves experiencing confusion, meaninglessness, stress, overwhelm, or activation in one of our relationships, or with our work, or our parenting. We're scared or worried about the future, or feeling down or bad about ourselves, ashamed, hurt, or just unsure about what it is that we're really doing here. It's not easy, and in fact, it's quite counterinstinctual, meaning it goes against the status quo, psychic as well as the collective status quo, to open to the possibility that these moments of dissolution and rearrangement are portals into a specific region of the soul and the heart, where there's data and information waiting for us that we can access only there. Secret friends and allies and helpers along the way. And this is what I sometimes refer to as the blue spectrum of psyche, which carries its own wisdom, integrity, and beauty. And this isn't a theory for us to believe in, some new belief system to adopt. I mean, please don't take my word for it. As always, we have to go into the fire of our immediate experience to, into that inner alchemical laboratory and see and sense and know for ourselves. This is a sensual, tactile laboratory where we have to touch the materials in the vessel and be touched by them in return. We can't do it from the sidelines. It's not a secondhand spectator sport. And it can feel really risky, uncertain and shaky as we turn into the tender places, into the not quite known, into the dimly lit, more shadowy areas of psyche that long for us and our presence and our mercy and our compassion, that long for illumination. And the truth is that we live in a world, where in many ways we've lost touch with the reality of the soul and the creative and unexpected ways it expresses itself. It comes into this world of time and space as it reaches out and calls us closer, which at times it does through our embodied vulnerabilities and sensitivities, our sore spots and places through the core of the tenderness. And I think the experiential discovery of this opens us to the whole mandala, or the living reality of the wounded healer, Chiron and his merry band of travelers. And perhaps we're part of that lineage, the stream flowing from the Asclepian dream temples of ancient Greece, where wayfarers and heart travelers from all sorts of places would go to receive vision and to drink from the fountain. And in my experience, there is an inevitable reorganization that occurs as part of the natural process of transformation and healing. And while it's so very human and understandable, reasonable to want to skip over the unknowing, the uncertainty and the reassembling, and get quickly into the promised rebirth, if we do so prematurely, if we go around the pieces of the soul who are longing to be known and to be held, rather than accompanying them, we won't be able to access the wisdom that's found within the restructuring itself, that in fact is found only there. And the alchemists, the mystics, the poets, knew the importance of dissolution, the non-negotiable nature of it, and they experienced it as initiatory. And the reality is that for some of us, perhaps many of us, especially on a call like this, initiation occurs not by way of clarity and bliss, but by way of betrayal, transition, and loss. It's the crumbling away of that old dream, my life and the way I was so sure it was going to turn out, how it was supposed to turn out. And it's this disassembling, which is a vital alchemical process that creates the rich soil from which rejuvenation and rebirth can take root, but in a way that's grounded, embodied, and whole. Otherwise, it's going to be a rebirth that's premature. We have to bake and cook and marinate fully in the womb. In the alchemical vase, we can't emerge too soon. To be initiated in this way, our perception has to be cleansed. Our heart has to be polished, our body opened, our pathways washed with that scintilla of light, as the alchemists referred to those sparks of consciousness. We have to slow down, and with a passionate, alive, and earthy compassion, to attune to what is unfolding and being asked of us right now. To take some time to tend to the shifting nature of our internal world and to grieve, all that we'll inevitably lose as we heal and awaken. It's not only a process of acquisition, what I'll get from the path, which is valid, of course, but also what it is that will dissolve, what will be taken by the beloved, which seems to be his or her or its ultimate role in all of this. Or maybe that's just me. And that can really burn and ache, as it's tenderizing. I mean, it's love, of course, that is the dissolving agent. But the nature of what that love is outside the known. We can only know that through primary first-person experience by way of direct revelation. And it's a great act of wisdom and kindness to remember that the transformational process by its very nature is messy, it's glorious, it's full spectrum, it's all of it. It's the falling to the ground, and it's the standing back up, it's the failing, stepping back into life, failing again, failing well, failing with our hearts open, and succeeding again. And it's not only the activity of creation, but of reorganization as well. I mean, there's a sweet and flowing, nurturing sort of grace that we'll encounter on the path at times. And there's also a grace that's fierce and reorienting, a grace that works against the psychic status quo, that has a way of uprooting the way I've come to imagine myself, others, and the world, what a relationship is, what spirituality is, what vocation is, what this body is. But they're both grace. And when it comes to trauma and our own wounding, the reality is that we've all been given experience in this life that we've not been able to process consciously, whether through attachment wounding, narcissistic injury, relational trauma, or any other form of rejection, abandonment, hurt, or betrayal. This is one of the basic definitions of trauma, an overwhelming incapacity in information processing, unbearable, unendurable, emotional and psychic and somatic experience that hasn't been able to find a relational home in which it can be held. I mean, there are times in my clinical practice, for example, where I'll meet with someone who is clearly really suffering. But the thing is that they can't actually feel it. They can't actually feel that pain, in an experiential way. They're not able to feel the emotional quality of that experience. It's more of a numbing or a flatness, more of a dissociative shutdown or psychic collapse, which usually makes a lot of sense based on what happened earlier in their lives and was a coherent and adaptive response to what would otherwise have resulted in a full-scale fragmentation in their sense of self, along with the experience of a survival level sort of anxiety, panic, terror. And so this unprocessed, unmetabolized, unendurable experience is one of the hallmarks of unresolved early emotional wounding. And the response then, is to find a way slowly, safely, together to access that emotional experience, to touch and be touched by it in the here and now, to contain it, verbalize it, articulate it, symbolize it, provide it with voice, and together for us to make sense of it slowly, safely, slowly, safely. I'm with you and we're safe. I'm with you and we're safe. It's this experiential feeling, verbalizing, and making sense of our experience, illuminating the unconscious meanings that we've ascribed to it. That is the real essence of this process of integration, which involves a conscious, embodied containing and holding of the emotional and somatic material that has been dissociated, usually for very intelligent and coherent reasons. Right before we got started today, I was reflecting on something that James Hillman said about the process of therapy, about the essence of therapy from his perspective, or at least his perspective in that moment, which is a bit provocative and I can really relate with. He said that people come to therapy really for blessing, not so much to fix what's broken, but to get what's broken blessed. And so even if our primary interest is in spiritual transformation, we can't separate out our unresolved relational trauma, attachment wounding, and the narcissistic injury we may have experienced. Because what happens is that the disavowed, the dissociated, and unprocessed material will shape our perception. and it will form a cycle, it's like a little map, a psychic template, a reality tunnel through which we're able to imagine ourselves, our relationships, and also our connection with the mystery and with our own spirituality. The point here is that all of this is intertwined. There's no bright, solid dividing line between therapeutic healing work, tending to relational wounding, and spiritual transformation. They are interwoven threads that braid together as they shape and form the tapestry of the human person. I mean, in this sense, tending to our unresolved trauma is the spiritual path. And what I've discovered in my own life, through my own suffering, and also in my clinical work, is that if we fail to tend to our wounding and trauma, it will inevitably leak out and color any realization that we might have. And that which we're unable to access, hold, articulate, and contain in a narrative, make sense of, and integrate will be evoked in others. It'll be enacted within the relational field, or it will come into the body as somatic activation in a variety of shapes and forms, as what we sometimes call a symptom. And I've seen this in myself, and also through therapeutic work I've done with a number of experienced yogis and meditators over the years, and also a few spiritual teachers who have really been humbled by this path and discovered in their own lives how even their deepest realizations, their experiences of pure absolute consciousness or union with God, states of unity and oneness, didn't always touch and reach and heal those deepest wounds of the heart, which are really wounds around love. And so as a way to explore all of this, starting a new group and a course where we can make a deep dive into these things throughout an entire year. And in this way, really prioritize or, recommit to our own unique path of transformation and healing. And so over 12 months, we'll explore the nature of a soulful spirituality, one that includes the body and the nervous system, is sensitive to trauma and shadow, emotional attunement, and weaves together really the insights, the discoveries and practices from, the fields of depth and somatic psychotherapies, relational neuroscience and trauma studies, and the wisdom of the meditative and the alchemical traditions. And so we'll drop a link in here if you'd like to learn more. We'll be getting started 1 week from today on February 2nd. And if this is something you're interested in or feel called to learn more about, please take a look at the course page. And so whether we're prioritizing safety, regulation, resourcing, which is essential in tending to traumatic and post-traumatic stress, or uncovering work, as it's sometimes called, illuminating unconscious schemas or shadow integration, or whether it's intimacy and relationship as yoga and path, or existential matters such as freedom, purpose, meaning, aliveness, aloneness, or the more transpersonal or spiritual aspects of being, involving a radical transformation in our identity and perception. No matter which of these we're emphasizing in a given moment or period in our lives, we can turn to the wisdom, the compassion, and the skillful means of the various approaches, traditions, and practices to help us along the way, to the lived experience of an embodied wholeness. And my intention for the group and the course is, together for us to discover and participate in a dynamic, safe, and probably provocative holding environment in which we can explore the mysteries of transformation and healing. and a relationship with the creative unknown in the depths of soul. It's been my experience, that despite the temptation, we can't just go straight to love, forgiveness, bliss, acceptance, to limitless being without first illuminating, holding, tending, and making sense of the pain and the hurt and the betrayal at the root of relational wounding. The little one who's there, who's frozen and crystallized in the time machine, who's still here, isn't able to accompany us into those regions of experience, not in a way that's embodied and whole, not yet. And to sort of deny or to force this or to go around it prematurely, which we've all done and we all do, only results in further misattunement and empathic failure. And it will close their little heart. The one carrying our undigested pain must first be heard, felt and understood, contained within a field of safety from which they can illuminate and release the burdens of the past. And this is what will unlock that organic unfolding of a truly embodied acceptance and forgiveness and return home. And from within that home base, we're able to play again, create, feel, live, and to rest and explore in unstructured states of being. We can't just push past the unmetabolized emotional and somatic activation and storm the castle of our protective organization and grab the philosopher's stone, off the shelf and run back to our meditation cushion. There's a journey that has to be made into the shadow, into the somatic unconscious, into reunion with the forgotten ones of psyche and soma. And these interior figures and pieces of soul live, move, and breathe, not in the light, not in the prefrontal cortex, but in the more dimly lit regions of shadow, of bodily and subcortical circuitry, and in the hidden forests of implicit memory. And they have a way of becoming solidified and crystallized and frozen in time. But despite that, they don't seem to ever quite give up in trying to reach us and trying to return home. And they spin and they twirl and they make their appearance known as a strange mood, as a disturbing or an exciting image, as an emptiness in our heart, as a butterfly in our bellies, even as a color or as an animal friend or a living being in nature. They're relentless in that way, and they'll never give up. And despite the appearances to the contrary, they come not as an obstacle to our path, but as the very path itself, as its representative, as that ally of integration or that emissary of wholeness. And they also appear at times very vividly, as we all know, as the other in our lives, as intimate partner, friend, parent, child, and the one who irritates and inspires us the most, as the one who evokes powerful emotion and fantasy. Perhaps it's no coincidence that we're attracted or repelled by those, by those who manifest qualities that we've disowned in ourselves. It's always a bit more mysterious than it may seem on the surface. And so trauma becomes embedded when our capacity to process and integrate emotional, psychic, and somatic experience is overwhelmed. But as if this weren't enough, on top of the terror, anxiety, shame, the rage, there's an unendurable aloneness that goes with this. A deep sense in knowing that I'm alone in this. This is the lived reality of the missing friend, which in some ways is more painful than the emotions and the bodily arousal itself. And not only do we experience that flooding, of unbearable images, feelings, survival level anxiety, annihilatory sense of panic, whatever it is for us, but at some really basic level, I'm alone with all that. And no one can really understand. And this is one of the hallmarks of traumatic organization. And in my experience, it's this aloneness, this lack of a companion that's so devastating to us as sensitive, relational mammals, with a nervous system that has been crafted for accompaniment, psychically, emotionally, spiritually, as well as neurophysiologically. And so as an act of mercy and compassion through our inner and relational work, we make the journey inside the neural network into the alchemical vessel seen, through the eyes of the neuroscientist, which is holding or containing our unmetabolized shame, terror, rage, and grief. And it's here where we'll find the frozen, confused, and scared little one who has become stuck in the time machine of trauma and lost in the disorganizing fields of implicit memory. And then to turn toward them, surrounding them with our presence, our compassion, our holding, so that they feel, felt, and understood. And more than anything, help them to know that they're safe now, perhaps for the first time ever, and to bear witness to their untold story as it unfolds across verbal, somatic, and autonomic narratives. Yes, I hear you. I see you. I want to know you, hold you, care for you, listen to you. I will not forget you. I will not forsake you. You are allowed to be. You're no longer alone. It's okay now. You're safe. And even if you continue to shatter, I will collect the pieces within a holy vase and we'll hold them together. As the very wise Maya Angelou once said, there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story within you. It's what is sometimes called an emotionally corrective experience. You may have heard that, or we might call it a reparative neural experience that unveils that sacred soothing, where the unmetabolized images, feelings, and sensations are taken into a sanctuary, placed on that altar in the soul and the psyche, that altar inside of the heart, where they can be held and tended with empathy, listening, presence, and love. And while understanding and insight and clarity can all be helpful and supportive, we all know quite a lot. But it's my experience, which is also borne out in the research, is that it's empathically attuned immersion in fields of safety that fosters cellular restructuring. The psyche will reassemble when it feels safe. The body will reorganize when it feels safe. And in this way, in the words of Stephen Porges, the architect of polyvagal theory, safety is the treatment. So many of us feel so much shame related to our trauma, our wounding, and our sensitivities, as if they're evidence that we failed, that it's our fault, that something's wrong with us, and that we're broken and beyond repair. And even if we know this isn't accurate, that cortical knowledge, is no match for the subcortical fires in our limbic and bodily circuitry, where untended grief, sadness, rage, anxiety, panic dwell as the shattered children of our unlived lives. As human beings, we're wired to co-regulate, to rest, to heal, explore, and play within a relational field. We weren't crafted to do it all on our own. Not all the time. That's just not the reality of the nervous system that goes with this particular star. It's so important to remember that. No apology for that. No judgment, no shame, no apology. I mean, we can do so much for one another to transmute personal, collective, and transgenerational trauma and misperception. The words we use, the softness in our eyes, our presence when we listen, taking the time and the care to ensure that the other feels felt and understood. And so many of us are living in a way where we've become tuned or toned to detect cues of danger and life threat, where it's just not safe to be who and what we are. And if you want to help someone in your life, start by helping them to feel safe. And this isn't only for the others on the outside, but for the internal ones as well, who are also longing for that safety, for you, for your holding presence. And we have to remember that so much of our wounding occurs prior to the acquisition of language and isn't able to be healed through cognitive restructuring or questioning and reorganizing patterns of thinking. In other words, we can't think our way out of trauma, out of attachment wounding, out of narcissistic injury. And when our capacity to process, excuse me, unbearable terror, panic, shame, and rage is overwhelmed, undigested pieces of experience, pieces of soul are held subcortically and in our cellular circuitry, unreachable by thinking, which is a layer removed from the fires of the alchemical body. And encouragement, even if well-intentioned, which it often is, to just get over it. That's totally irrational. You can't really believe that. That's not true. Of course you're not in danger. My God, get it together. All of that is experienced by a sensitive nervous system as the activity of misattunement, empathic failure, aggression, and even violence. We might even see it as like an autonomic nervous system version of gaslighting. And it reflects a deep misunderstanding of trauma and the workings of implicit memory, and only contributes to re-traumatization in personal, cultural, and collective networks. When that raging, alive little boy or aching little girl cries out longing to be held, to be known, to be felt, to be heard, to be remembered, peeking their little heads out as if to say, is it safe now? How about now? I've been waiting, for so long for a companion and a friend. How about now? They're not all that interested in our clear cognitive analysis, our cognitive restructuring and behavioral modification strategies, our rational inquiry, our powerful spiritual insights, or our deep thoughts on the matter. They're yearning for something else, for you, for your heart, for your holding, to know that you will stay near, that you won't abandon or shame them, that you'll do your best, not be perfect, that you'll do your best. And they can feel that intention, to provide sanctuary and safe passage so that they can come home. They can be allowed to emerge out of that frozen, crystallized state and to live and to move and to breathe and to play once again. And so when it's all said and done, I think what's become most clear to me, just speaking for myself anyway, is ultimately how little, I really know about the soul, how it heals and unfolds and flowers, and about the mystery that is this human body and spirit. And the person in front of me is vast and majestic, and I can only stand in awe at the power and the beauty of one human heart as it longs to, return home, to, attune to and be a companion within that level of benevolence and grace. And in the end, just to say it in a way that maybe is a bit provocative, but It's not techniques that heal. It's love that heals. It's safety, empathy, connection, attunement. Techniques are fine and can be helpful, of course. I'm not anti-technique, but it's the relationship between two or more nervous systems and the love that infuses the relational field, that in between, that transitional space, which is what enables the techniques to come alive if and when they do. Love first, technique second, and then more love. Okay, I think I'll wrap it up there here for today. And I just want to thank you for being here with me and for your time and energy and interest. And of course, I'd love to see you inside the course and inside the new group if you're drawn. And you can find all those details through the links here. And if I don't see you there, I look forward to staying in touch in other ways over the weeks and the months to come. And so please take care of yourself, and I'm wishing you a belated, joyful, peaceful, safe, happy, and meaningful new year. Okay, my friends, lots of love.